Welcome to Connections. I'm your host, April Healy. Welcome back, you guys. I'm sitting with Kimberly Edwards, my very good friend and second-year staff of Bethel School of Supernatural Ministries. Hey, Kim, welcome. I'm glad you're here.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you're joining us. All right, I want to ask you tons of questions to get to know you and to just create connection, really. How did you get to Bethel, Atlanta?
Wow. Okay, so my husband and I were actually a part of a ministry out in San Antonio, Texas, and we were actually launched here to Atlanta to do a missions-based plant.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and part of our apostolic strategy was to go around the churches in the city to, see what God was doing and feel His presence and things like that. And so we did that for a few Sundays, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I wish there was something like Bethel in Atlanta. So I typed in a church like Bethel in Atlanta, and then Bethel, Atlanta popped up.
Really? Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and so I was like, oh my gosh, there's a Bethel in Atlanta. And so we were really excited. And we came and visited, and it was amazing. And we started coming Sunday after Sunday, even though we were supposed to be rotating. And we just kind of fell in love. And I just said a little whisper. I was like, I wish this could be my life. This is awesome. So.
Wow. So how did you transition from that church structure to this?
Well, we actually wound up having our own services on Sundays for a bit.
Okay.
For about 9 months. And then we just really felt like God was transitioning us. And so we resigned from that ministry, and it was like, well, we're not going to go to church.
Yeah.
And so we were both like, let's go to Bethel. And so we started coming to Bethel, and have been here pretty much ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah, when we're in town.
Right.
So
yeah, which is more often than not.
More often than not now, but that first year, we just really committed to not touching a chair, not helping. We just were like, we're just going to come to church and leave, which was kind of hard for us, being that we'd served in ministry together for so long. It was new, but it was a great season of rest for us, and a season to just receive and not always giving out. So it was a really good season for us to just rest. So
that's awesome. So typically, when you say we have always done ministry, you mean you not touch a chair, give me more into that world.
Okay. Well, let's see. So I start from my adult, because I actually sang in the choir. I was over the usher board in high school. I was over the youth department in high school. But as an adult, we also worked in ministry. My husband was very heavily involved in music. He was the minister of music. I was on the choir, as I joke about that. And I also was an armor bearer. And so kind of a part of the back behind the scenes stuff with ministry. Helped out at the administrative skills as well, so did a lot of that. So I've always kind of been behind the scenes regarding ministry. So
what do you have a heart for?
Wow. I have a heart for people knowing that they're important, and that what they bring to the table matters, and that it doesn't have to look like what someone else's picture may look like, but that whatever it is that they have is important. So
okay. Yeah. So if you use that in a ministry form, what would you do to be able to get people to give that gift away?
Right. Well, just really pouring into people, creating community. That's something that my husband and I actually do here at Bethel, Atlanta. We love having different events where people can come out. One weekend we all went out to the Braves game, and just really sharing our hearts with people, and then also hearing from them. Sometimes people just want to talk and know that someone's listening. And so just really giving them that ear to hear what they have to share, and then pouring back and saying, wow, what you have is amazing, and just letting them know how important they are. And so I think we do that through community. So
yeah, you guys are really good at community.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if I gave you a mic today and said, okay, get on stage and preach, what would be something that you would want to give your heart away? What would be the thing that you preached about?
I would definitely, there's 2 scriptures that come to mind when you say that or ask that. Romans 8:28, where it says that all things work together for our good, for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. And I know that for me personally, there's been times where we made decisions that didn't necessarily go as we planned or as we thought it should have gone. and just really learning to find the gold and the good in it instead of focusing on what didn't happen or the disappointment of it.
Yeah.
And just understanding that there were some key things that happens in each season of our lives that make us who we are and shape us into who God would design for us to be. So, and then also Ephesians 4:16, where it talks about each part does its work and how we grow together. And I think that's really important. Once again, back to the whole thing about each part being important. And I actually have a little example that I want to share.
I love your examples. Let's see 'em.
Yeah, I'm a really visual learner. And so one thing that I do is talk about how no matter how big or small your part is, that it is important. And so as we see here, this pin, it's a whole pin.
I love everything about you right now.
Right.
Okay, keep going.
So this pin is a whole pin, and it's pretty big, and it works, and it's an instrument that we use to write with. But if you take out the spring, which is this really small piece here, it doesn't work. Like, it doesn't stay down. So if I were to write, it kind of pushes back up and it won't necessarily write.
Yeah.
So just understanding that each part is important, and this really small piece that we may think is, not very important, it's probably the most important part because it holds it all together. And so that's definitely something that I have learned over the years, especially having an administrative background. Sometimes people want to be behind the mic and preach or different things like that, but just understanding that, in an administrative role, like we're like the support system to that organization, and that it's also important. And just because you're not seen, that doesn't mean that the role that you play is not important. So even scrubbing the toilets is really important. It's good to have clean toilets for people to use when they come to service. So I find it all important. So.
Those are, yes, I'm always grateful when those toilets are clean.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you made any New Year's resolutions for this year? And if so, what are they?
Okay. For as far as New Year's resolutions, just to continue to be myself. I find that has been great for me to just, no matter how someone else's response is. I feel like in second year that really kind of rang true to me.
So, Kim, have you made any New Year's resolution goals?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I'm definitely wanting to press into this year is just continuing to be myself.
Nice.
When I was in second year, that was something that definitely rang true, was just to be myself. And so I kind of was going through that thing of, well, what if I hug someone, I'm like, hey, how you doing, April? And then you're just like, hey. And then I'm like, wow, what? And then I'm like, what did I do? Did I do something to offend them or what have you? But something that definitely rang true was that no matter how that person's response is, I can continue to be who I am and just bring all of who I am to the table.
Yeah.
And sometimes it even warms people up to where they're like, oh, I can be free to be who I am. And then even if who they are is just hi, that's okay.
Yeah.
If that's who they are, if that's truly who they are.
Sure.
So definitely just really also encouraging others to be free to be who they are also.
So what do you practically do to work through, those moments where you give someone a hug and they're not really responding the way that you thought they would or that you want them to?
Right.
How do you work through that internally where you're do you just remind yourself, or what do you do?
Absolutely. I actually have a great example of that. Over the weekend, I hugged someone in the family, and when I hugged her, she was just hard as a rock. She was like, I don't do that hugging stuff. And, at that moment, I had a choice to make. I could have pulled back and be like, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Or I could just say, you know what, I do, and it's okay. So, I just stayed with who I was, not necessarily being overbearing, but not allowing who she is at this moment to, be a reflection on who I am. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Really good.
Thank you.
Tell me a little bit about your revelation on identity. I know that that's a massive key in you.
Absolutely. Okay, so growing up, I was actually an athlete, nationally ranked since the age of 8. I went to nationals every year from 8 to 18. And so I feel like my identity was somewhat wrapped up in winning. And then also I was in Girl Scouts, and I received the highest award in Girl Scouts. I was in Girl Scouts until I was 18 also. And so I felt like I was always achieving and winning and different things like that. But then as an adult, I went into the military and just experienced a whole different perspective of life, of not necessarily always winning or in the apparent way of winning. And so with that being said, I actually had to make a choice. Like, is my identity going to be wrapped up in if I feel like I'm successful or if I feel like I'm winning, or am I going to find my identity in Christ? Mm-hmm. And so I just once again had to make a decision, a conscious choice to say my identity isn't wrapped in am I winning or am I successful at what I feel like I should be successful at, and not so much focusing on the failures, but actually learning from them and just moving forward in life with my hope being in God. So.
Yeah, that's really good. That's such a key to like know who you are and have your identity be just solid in Him, because so often there's so many things that can pull us away from that. And so great job like going after that. That's such a good key for all of us to know. So thanks for joining us, Kim. I'm so glad you were here. I can't wait for you to join us next time. And guys, thanks also for joining us, and please come back and join us next time. We love to have you.